Hi, I'm McKenna Crookshanks, and my video essay will be about mass incarceration in America and how that directly affects minorities. First, what is mass incarceration? Mass incarceration can be defined as the reality that the United States criminalizes and incarcerates more of its own people than any other country in the history of the world, and inflicts that enormous harm primarily on the most vulnerable among us, poor people of color, according to the Institute to End Mass Incarceration. This directly affects minorities, specifically Black and Latino people, because they make up the majority of the incarcerated population, but make up less than 1/3 of the total population in the United States, according to the Institute to End Mass Incarceration. The United States of America has the highest percentage of people incarcerated compared to the general population in the developed world. America has about 2 million people incarcerated and about 4.5 million people under state supervision on any given day, according to the Institute to End Mass Incarceration. Additionally, racial minorities are disproportionately incarcerated compared to white Americans. According to Carson, only 31% of people incarcerated in 2022 were white, with the highest percentage of incarcerated people being Black at 32%. I chose this topic because I'm a social work major who is passionate about helping those without a voice. And this topic shines a light on arguably the largest voiceless population in America, incarcerated individuals. Those who are currently or formerly incarcerated lose rights that are protected by our government. However, I still believe they are humans who deserve to have dignity and worth, and that starts with having a voice. Dignity and worth of the person is one of the National Association of Social Workers' core values in the Code of Ethics, as identified on the NASW website. So how did mass incarceration come to be? Let's get into it. Mass incarceration began around the late 1970s due to the war on drugs started by President Richard Nixon, which began in June 1971. The war on drugs was declared because President Nixon said drug abuse was public enemy number one. In 1973, the Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA, was created when the Office for Drug Abuse Law Enforcement, the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, and the Office of Narcotics Intelligence were all merged together, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Ronald Reagan's focus on criminal punishment over treatment led to a massive increase in incarcerations for non-violent drug offenses, from 50,000 in 1980 to 400,000 in 1997, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. His stance that prison is better than rehabilitation treatment, along with Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign, expanded the war on drugs in the 1980s due to the increased use of crack cocaine. Since approximately 80% of crack users were African American, mandatory minimums led to an unequal increase of incarceration rates for nonviolent Black drug offenders, as well as claims that the war on drugs was a racist institution, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Mandatory minimums were put in place for various drug offenses by the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. This also gave $1.7 billion to the war on drugs, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Mandatory minimums are minimum prison sentences set in place for different offenses. The population of people under state supervision now amounts to about 6 million, compared to the 1970s, when the total number of people under state supervision, including incarceration, was around 360,000. We can see that the war on drugs is directly correlated to mass incarceration in the United States due to this increase in individuals under supervision, according to Nellis. I want to bring your attention to another issue related to mass incarceration as it directly affects minorities. Historically, prisons were used as a way around the anti-slavery laws put in place by our government. The WEX definition team of the Legal Information Institute defines slavery as the practice of forced labor and restricted liberty. Prisons can force incarcerated individuals to perform unpaid or majorly reduced paid labor, according to the ACLU. According to the ACLU, incarcerated workers typically earn little to no pay at all, with many making just pennies an hour. They earn, on average, between 13 cents and 52 cents per hour nationwide. Wages remain stagnant for years, even decades. In 7 states, incarcerated workers are not paid at all for the vast majority of work assignments. Additionally, many prisoners are concerned about their safety while working these jobs, as 64% reported feeling this way in a study conducted by the ACLU. Incarcerated individuals are not afforded the same workplace protections that other Americans are, which include minimum wage laws, overtime protections, the right to unionize, and workplace safety guarantees, according to the ACLU. Mass incarceration is a large problem in the United States that affects millions of Americans. The statistics I've highlighted throughout my video essay should be more than enough to encourage you to want to do something to help reduce our prison population and give freedoms back to those who need them. However, there are limitations in what you can do to help. I think it is important to address the limitations of providing help to those incarcerated. In doing this, I hope it encourages you to think of other ways to provide help to incarcerated individuals. One limitation is how reintegrating those previously incarcerated into society can be extremely difficult unless you work directly with this population. It is almost impossible to help with reintegration efforts from the outside unless you can donate money to these efforts. However, I know that donations are far and few between for many reasons. Another limitation is how policy change is unlikely. Unless you are an elected official in office who works in prison policies, the only thing you can do is vote for politicians who support this cause and try to contact current elected officials to let them know your stance as one of their constituents. Essentially, donating money and voting for change are the most helpful things you can do to incite change unless you work directly with those incarcerated. There are a few policies that can be implemented to help with mass incarceration, and one policy that is being proposed is the Transforming Prisons Act, which would permit states to apply for funds to support innovative programs and practices that would improve prison conditions for both the people who live in prisons and work in prisons. This dual approach would begin to transform prisons into a more just and humane experience for both groups, according to Vischer and Eason. Other policies can be implemented to allocate funds in the corrections system to broaden therapeutic programs like parenting classes, family engagement workshops, anger management, and artistic programming, according to Vischer and Eason. When the corrections system focuses on rehabilitation instead of punishment, recidivism rates decline. To address future research recommendations, I would like to mention a couple of practices that are currently existing and others that are in the works. Some existing jail and prison correctional systems are implementing broad organization changes, including immersive faith-based correctional programs, jail-based 60 to 90-day re-entry programs to prepare individuals for their transition to the community, Scandinavian and other European models to change prison culture, and an innovative cognitive community approach operating in several correctional facilities in Virginia, are a few existing efforts that are being implemented. However, they have not been rigorously evaluated, which leaves room for new models to be developed and tested, according to Vischer and Eason. An effort for the cognitive community model to be implemented and tested in some states is in the works. However, this model requires a lot more funding and rigorous tests in order to become an established model used in the United States, according to Vischer and Eason. The cognitive community model is a way for the incarcerated individuals to gain a sense of community and diversity with others who are incarcerated, according to Vischer and Eason. Despite these limitations and the need for newer policies and future research, mass incarceration is an issue that needs to be addressed. As a future social worker, I desperately want to give a voice to the voiceless. Incarcerated individuals need our help now more than ever. Thank you for watching my video.